Your Honor, I survived wars, lost my leg, yet this letter proves everything.
Sir, you risked everything and still stayed silent. Today, the truth finally speaks.
The television courtroom has witnessed thousands of cases, but it was never prepared for the moment the iron-willed Judge Judy Sheindlin, a woman whose heart is rumored to be made of gavel-hardened steel, completely lost her composure and broke down in front of a stunned national audience. Imagine a man who survived the harshest jungles of Vietnam, a hero who carries the literal weight of his service in a prosthetic limb, standing in a room where a billionaire landlord is laughing at his homelessness. This isn't just a legal dispute, it is a collision between pure, unadulterated greed and a level of sacrificial honor that most people can't even fathom. The defendant, Marcus Thorne, a man who views humans as mere line items on a balance sheet, didn't just want to evict 68-year-old Elias. He wanted to erase him. He sat there in a suit that cost more than Elias's annual pension, smirking as he described a decorated veteran as clutter and a liability to the aesthetic of luxury living. But Thorne made one fatal nuclear mistake. He assumed that because Elias was poor he was powerless. He had no idea that Elias was carrying a secret, a weathered, yellowed envelope tucked into his breast pocket that contained a revelation so explosive it would not only bankrupt Thorne's reputation but leave the most famous judge in the world gasping for air as she read the words aloud. By the time this trial concludes, you will see a transformation so profound that it redefined what justice looks like in the modern age. You are about to witness the exact second the smug grin was ripped off a billionaire's face as he realized he wasn't just losing a lawsuit. He was being exposed as the ultimate villain in his own father's legacy. This story is so powerful, so filled with the kind of raw human emotion that restores your faith in the universe, that you simply cannot turn away. If you believe that our veterans deserve a throne rather than a sidewalk, and if you want to see a greedy corporate monster get dismantled piece by piece on national television, then you need to hit that subscribe button right now and smash the like button with the same force Judge Judy uses to strike her gavel. We are on a mission to bring these stories of absolute accountability to the world, and your support ensures that heroes like Elias are never forgotten. Subscribe now because the evidence we are about to reveal is something the billionaire's legal team tried to suppress with every dollar they had, but in this courtroom the truth isn't for sale. The atmosphere in the room was thick with a tension you could almost taste. Marcus Thorne sat at the defense table, his body language screaming untouchable. He was the CEO of Thorne Legacy Holdings, a man who specialized in revitalizing neighborhoods, which was really just a fancy way of saying he kicked out the elderly and the vulnerable to build glass towers for the elite. Across from him stood Elias, standing as straight as his aging frame would allow, his eyes fixed forward with the discipline of a soldier. Judge Judy began the proceedings with her usual razor-sharp focus, her eyes darting between the sleek, digital filings of the billionaire and the stack of handwritten notes in front of the veteran. Thorne's lead attorney, a man who looked like he'd sold his soul for a corner office, started the opening statement by claiming that Elias was a holdover tenant, who had failed to sign a new, modernized lease agreement that tripled the rent. They claimed they had followed every legal procedure to the letter, and that Elias's refusal to vacate was criminal trespassing. Thorne even had the audacity to sigh loudly, checking his gold watch as if the life of the man across from him was a minor inconvenience in his busy schedule of acquiring more wealth. But Judge Judy isn't just any judge, she is a heat-seeking missile for lies. She leaned over the bench, her voice dropping to that dangerously quiet register that signals an impending storm. She asked Thorne a simple question. Mr. Thorne, you claim this man has no right to stay in that apartment, yet he has lived there for 15 years. Why, after your father passed away and you took over the company, did his right suddenly vanish? Thorne's response was a masterclass in arrogance. He claimed his father was sentimental and bad at business, and that the charity era of the company was over. The audience gasped. The disrespect toward his own father's memory was the first crack in his armor. Judy's eyes narrowed into glacial slits. She looked at Elias and asked him if he had anything to say. Elias didn't shout, he didn't beg. He simply reached into his pocket and pulled out that secret letter. He told the court, "Your Honor, I don't want his money. I just want to know why he threw away the only thing I had left of the man who promised me I'd never be cold again." Thorne laughed, a cold, metallic sound, and told the judge the letter was likely a forgery. It was at this moment that Judge Judy demanded the bailiff bring the letter to her. As she took the envelope, the courtroom fell into a silence so profound you could hear the heartbeat of the person next to you. To understand the depth of this betrayal, we have to look back at how Marcus Thorne turned a sanctuary into a battlefield. For 15 years, Elias lived in a modest rent-controlled apartment in a building formerly owned by Marcus's father, Arthur Thorne. Arthur was a man of the old world, a man who understood that a handshake was a contract and that loyalty was the highest form of currency. He had explicitly told Elias that as long as he was alive, Elias would have a home. But when Arthur passed away, the Thorne name was inherited by a man who viewed loyalty as a weakness and human beings as obstacles to a higher profit margin. Marcus Thorne didn't see a war hero when he looked at Elias. He saw a square footage problem. He saw an aging veteran paying a fraction of the market rate, in a neighborhood that was rapidly gentrifying into a playground for the ultra-wealthy. Marcus wanted to install marble countertops and smart home technology, and Elias's presence, with his old military trunk and his slow, rhythmic walk, didn't fit the brand. The campaign to remove Elias was nothing short of psychological warfare. It started with clerical errors. Suddenly, Elias's rent checks, which he hand-delivered every month, began to disappear. Marcus's legal team began sending notices of non-payment, piling on late fees that were designed to swallow Elias's meager social security check. When Elias provided receipts, the management office simply ignored them, claiming their digital systems were upgrading. Then came the physical harassment. The heat in Elias's unit would mysteriously fail in the dead of winter. The water would be shut off for emergency repairs that lasted for days without explanation. Construction crews would begin jackhammering at 6 in the morning directly above his bedroom. It was a calculated, cold-blooded attempt to break a man who had already survived the worst conditions imaginable in the service of his country. Marcus Thorne figured that a 68-year-old man with a prosthetic leg would eventually just give up and slip away into the shadows of the city's homeless shelters. But Marcus Thorne severely underestimated the resolve of a man trained by the United States Army. Elias didn't break. Instead, he started documenting. Every time a maintenance worker refused to fix a leak, Elias took a photo. Every time a rent check was refused, he went to the post office and sent it via certified mail with a return receipt requested. He turned his small apartment into a command center for his own survival. However, the breaking point came 3 months ago when Elias returned from a VA medical appointment to find his locks changed and his life's work sitting on the rain-soaked sidewalk. Marcus had bypassed the legal eviction process entirely, banking on the fact that Elias wouldn't have the resources to fight back. Among the items tossed into the trash were Elias's medals, his uniform, and most importantly, a small wooden box containing the letters his wife had written him while he was deployed, the only things that kept him sane during the darkest nights of his life. By the time Elias could gather his belongings, many of them had been ruined by the rain or stolen by passers-by. Marcus Thorne stood on the balcony of the penthouse, watching the scene through his designer sunglasses, and reportedly told his assistant, "The trash has finally been taken out." He thought he had won. He thought that by throwing Elias onto the street, he had cleared the way for his next multi-million-dollar renovation. He had no idea that by throwing away that sentimental garbage, he had inadvertently set the stage for his own public execution in Judge Judy's courtroom. When the case finally reached the bench, Marcus was still playing the role of the victim. He complained to Judge Judy about the emotional stress Elias was causing his staff by loitering near the property. He had the gall to ask for damages to cover the cost of the locksmith and the cleaning fees required to sanitize the apartment after Elias left. Judge Judy's face remained a mask of concentrated fury as she listened to Thorne's attorney describe the illegal lockout as a misunderstanding of municipal code. She kept her eyes fixed on Marcus, who was busy checking his reflection in his smartphone screen. She knew that men like Thorne don't respond to appeals for mercy, they only respond to the sound of their own empire crumbling. And as she looked back down at the letter Elias had just handed her, the letter Marcus's father had written decades ago, she realized she held the match that would light the fire. The courtroom air was so heavy it felt like it was pressing against the lungs of everyone present. Judge Judy stared at the letter, this secret document that the defendant, Marcus Thorne, had dismissed as sentimental garbage. She didn't just read it, she dissected it with her eyes, her lips tightening into a thin line of pure, concentrated fury. She looked up at Marcus, who was leaning back with an air of bored entitlement. checking his fingernails as if the proceedings were beneath him. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerously low register that signaled a coming storm, "you have spent this entire morning calling this man a blight on your property. You have mocked his service, you have ridiculed his poverty, and you have treated this courtroom like your personal playground. But I think you've forgotten one very important detail about the law. It doesn't care about your designer shoes, but it cares deeply about a contract written in blood." She then turned to the video monitor behind her. "Mr. Thorne, your legal team submitted a sworn affidavit claiming that your father left no specific instructions regarding this building's long-term tenants. You claimed there were no legacy agreements. Well, it seems my researchers found something that your high-priced attorneys conveniently overlooked." On the screen, a digital scan of a private bank ledger appeared. It was dated back to the day Marcus's father died. The audience leaned forward, gasping as they saw a series of blocked transactions. "These are the payments Elias tried to make," Judy barked. "And these red flags? These are the manual overrides initiated from your personal computer to block his rent, create a false debt, and trigger an illegal eviction. You weren't just a landlord, Marcus. You were a digital sniper trying to take out a man who fought for your right to even exist." The hidden secret was finally being dragged into the light. But Judge Judy wasn't done. She picked up the letter again, her hands shaking, not with age but with the raw emotion of a woman who had finally seen too much. "This letter," she whispered, "isn't just a thank you note from your father to Elias. It's a legal mandate. It contains a clause that states if Elias is ever mistreated by the Thorne heirs, the ownership of the building transfers immediately to a trust for disabled veterans. You didn't just evict a tenant, Marcus. You just evicted yourself." The courtroom erupted. The rich family facade was crumbling in real time. Thorne's lawyer jumped up, shouting about due process and unauthenticated documents, but Judy silenced him with a single slam of her gavel that sounded like a gunshot. This is the moment where the hunter becomes the hunted. If you are watching this and your blood is boiling at the thought of a billionaire stealing from a hero, then you need to stand with Elias right now. Smash that like button to show the algorithm that we value honor over bank accounts. And if you want to see the exact second Judge Judy delivers the final, soul-crushing blow to Marcus Thorne's empire, you must subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications. We are inches away from the most satisfying ruling in television history, and you do not want to miss the moment where greed finally meets its maker. Subscribe now because justice is a dish best served in a courtroom where character is the only currency that matters. Marcus Thorne's face had turned from a smug tan to a sickly, glacial white. He tried to stammer out a defense, claiming that the letter was old-fashioned and that business is business. But Judge Judy was no longer listening to his excuses. She looked at Elias, who stood there with tears streaming down his face, his white knuckles gripping the edge of the witness stand. "Sir," she said, her voice softening for the first time, "I want to apologize to you on behalf of a system that let a man like this think he could treat you like trash. You carried his father on your back through a jungle, and he couldn't even carry the decency to let you keep your home." She then turned back to Marcus, her eyes narrowing into death stares that promised total destruction. "You thought because he was homeless he was silenced. You thought because he was poor he was invisible. But today he is the loudest person in this room and you are about to become very, very small." The proceedings moved into the nuclear phase. Judge Judy began to read the letter aloud, her voice echoing off the high ceilings of the courtroom. The letter described a midnight ambush where Elias had sacrificed his own leg to pull Arthur Thorne from a burning wreckage. It described a bond of brotherhood that Marcus had treated like a line item on a balance sheet. As Judy read, the casual arrogance of the defendant vanished. Marcus Thorne was no longer the king of real estate. He was a scolded child caught in a lie that was too big to pay his way out of. Judy didn't just rule on the eviction. She began a surgical demolition of Marcus's entire business ethics. She pointed out that he had systematically targeted veterans and the elderly across 5 different properties, using the same clerical error tactics he used on Elias. "You are a predator, Mr. Thorne," Judy declared, her voice rising to a crescendo of righteous indignation. "You use the law as a weapon to hurt the people the law was designed to protect. You think your wealth makes you untouchable? You think your country club status gives you a pass to be a monster? Not in my courtroom." She then did something legendary. She ordered a full forensic audit of the Thorne legacy holdings, effective immediately. She froze the accounts associated with the building and ordered the bailiff to take Marcus's passport. "You aren't going back to your penthouse today, Mr. Thorne. You are going to sit in a deposition room and explain to the district attorney why you've been embezzling from the very trust your father set up to protect men like Elias." The villain's nuclear breakdown was now complete. Marcus Thorne began to sob, not out of remorse, but out of the sheer panic of a man who had finally hit a wall he couldn't climb over. He looked at Elias and tried to offer a settlement right there on the spot, promising him $1 million to drop the nonsense. The audience hissed in disgust. Elias didn't even blink. He looked at Marcus and said, "My dignity isn't for sale, and neither was your father's memory." Judge Judy smiled, a cold, triumphant smile, and hammered her gavel. "The time for settlements is over, Mr. Thorne. Now is the time for consequences." The final section of this trial is about to begin. We are about to witness the restoration of faith that only happens once in a lifetime. Judge Judy is about to step down from her bench and do something she has never done in 30 years of television. If you believe that Elias deserves every penny of that billionaire's empire, and if you want to see the final, emotional conclusion to this saga, stay tuned. We are about to show you why this video became the most watched justice story on the internet. The climax of the trial was a scene of pure, unadulterated justice. Judge Judy stood up, her black robe billowing like the wings of an avenging angel. She didn't just award Elias the maximum judgment of $5,000 for the property damage. She invoked a special master to ensure the building's title was transferred to the Veterans Trust as per the secret letter. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of the moment, "you came in here thinking you were taking out the trash. But it turns out the only thing being disposed of today is your reputation." She then walked down from her bench, a move that stunned the crew and the audience alike. She walked straight to Elias, took his weathered hands in hers, and for the first time in her career she let the mask of the judge fall. A single tear rolled down Judge Judy's cheek as she whispered to Elias, "Thank you for your service and thank you for your patience. Justice was late, but it is here." The courtroom broke out into a standing ovation. People were weeping in the gallery. Even the bailiff had to turn away to hide his emotions. Marcus Thorne was led out in handcuffs, his $6,000 suit wrinkled and his Rolex glinting mockingly in the fluorescent lights. He had everything and now he had nothing because he forgot that human dignity cannot be purchased. This is the ultimate lesson of the Thorne trial. Your worth isn't measured by your bank account, it's measured by how you treat the people who can do nothing for you. Elias walked out of that courtroom not as a homeless man, but as the chairman of a new sanctuary for veterans. He held his head high, the secret letter tucked safely back in his pocket, a hero finally recognized. If this story restored your faith in humanity, and if you are glad to see a Karen of the corporate world finally lose it all, then you are the reason we make these videos. Before you go, hit that subscribe button one last time and leave a comment with the word respect to honor Elias. Your support helps us find these stories and bring them to the world. Remember, in a world full of Marcus Thornes, be an Elias. Stand tall, speak the truth, and never let anyone make you feel small. Thank you for watching until the very end. We'll see you in the next story of justice served.